All right, let's just dive right into one of the most intense and honestly difficult stories in the entire book of Genesis. We're talking about a raw, unfiltered account of crime, revenge, and the deep, deep fault lines running through a family that's supposed to become a nation. But to really get the story, we can't start with a person. We have to start with a place. Because some spots on the map, they're more than just dirt and rocks. They become these cosmic stages, these crossroads where divine promises and some of the worst human failures just collide. And for this story, that place is Shechem. We're talking about a city roughly 50 miles north of where Jerusalem is today. And it was a huge deal. This was a site of incredible promise. It's where God first appeared to Abraham in the land of Canaan. But it's also the setting for a story of absolute, brutal calamity. And that brings us to the event that lights the fuse on this whole powder keg. An act of violence so shocking, it just shatters the fragile peace that Jacob's family had barely managed to find. So let's quickly meet the key players here. First, you've got Dinah, who is Jacob's only daughter mentioned in the Genesis story. Then there's the prince of the land, who's also named Shechem, just like the city. Of course, there's her father, Jacob, the patriarch of this whole clan. And this is critical. Pay attention to Simeon and Levi. They're Dinah's full brothers, from the same mother, Leah. The story kicks off when Dinah goes out to visit some of the local women. And while she's there, Prince Shechem sees her, grabs her, and rapes her. The Bible doesn't pull any punches here. The language is blunt, it's unflinching, it's a horrific act of violence that triggers every terrible thing that comes next. Now, here's what's so stunning. It's the reaction, or really the lack of reaction, from Dinah's own father. Jacob hears this devastating news, and what does he do? The text says he kept silent. And this moment is often pointed to as just a profound, catastrophic failure of leadership. He's passive, he's detached. It almost seems like he's more worried about managing his son's tempers than the atrocity committed against his daughter. And that silence from Jacob is just deafening when you compare it to his sons. When they get back from the fields and hear what happened, they are just filled with grief and white-hot anger. They see it for exactly what it is, a disgrace, something that ought not to be done. And that outrage, that's the fuel for the firestorm that's about to erupt. So the crime's been committed. The family is fractured by silence and rage. And now we get this cascade of failed solutions where every single attempt to fix things just makes it a million times worse. So the first proposal comes from Hamor, who's the father of the rapist. And he doesn't come to Jacob with an apology. No, he comes with a business deal. He suggests they solve this whole ugly situation by having Shechem marry Dinah. And then he proposes this full-on economic merger between their two peoples. Intermarriage, trade, land deals. The actual injustice against Dinah? It's just completely ignored. It's treated like a negotiation. And this right here just perfectly shows how these two sides are on completely different planets. On one hand, you have Hamor's political play, all aimed at profit and blending their clans together. But on the other hand, you have the brothers' demand. And it's not a real counteroffer, it's a trap. Their goal isn't peace, it's pure vengeance. And they're willing to twist a sacred religious rite to get it. And this deception spirals into this just chillingly calculated plan. First, they weaponize circumcision, a holy rite, demanding every man in the city do it to seal the deal. Then, they wait. They actually wait to attack on the third day, which is when the men would be in the most pain and completely vulnerable. That's when the massacre begins. Simeon and Levi storm the city and kill every single man. And then, as if that weren't enough, the other brothers join in, plundering the entire city and taking the women and children captive. So after this horrific, large-scale slaughter, what is Jacob's response? Is it about justice, morality, the honor of his daughter? No. Once again, it is all about him. He actually complains to his sons, saying, "You've made me a stench to the people of this land." His number one concern is his own reputation and his own safety. The entire chapter just slams to a halt with the brothers' defiant comeback to their father. This is their justification for their brutal, wildly disproportionate revenge. In their eyes, their father did nothing, so they were the only ones willing to stand up for their sister's honor, no matter what the devastating cost. So we're left with this story of just complete moral chaos. Nobody comes out of this looking good. Not the prince, not his father, not Jacob, not the brothers. And this forces us to ask a really important question about why this story is even in the Bible to begin with. I mean, it's the question you have to ask, right? Why would a holy book carefully preserve a story that is so unholy? What are we supposed to possibly learn from this account of rape, deceit, and mass murder? Well, the thing is, this story seems to work on a bunch of different levels all at once. It's a raw picture of what happens when everybody just does what's right in their own eyes. It's a huge cautionary tale about failed leadership from a father. It's a stark warning against twisting something sacred for your own unholy purposes. But maybe, most importantly, it shows that even the absolute worst things people can do to each other cannot, ultimately, stop God's larger plan of redemption. And that very idea that there's a bigger plan at work brings us full circle, right back to where we started, the city of Shechem itself. Because the story of this specific place is far from over. Okay, now check out this timeline, because it is fascinating. Look at the history of this one spot. It's the place of God's first promise to Abraham. Then it's the site of this horrible calamity. Centuries go by, and Joshua gathers all of Israel right here to renew their covenant with God. Then it gets destroyed again. And then, 1,000 years later, something absolutely pivotal in the New Testament happens right here. At Jacob's well, just outside Shechem, Jesus sits down and talks to a Samaritan woman, someone from a people with deep roots in this very place of division and pain. And at this ancient crossroads of violence and broken promises, he offers her living water, a symbol of a new kind of covenant, one that can transcend all the blood and tragedy written into the very soil beneath their feet. And that leaves us with this final, powerful question. The story of Shechem, from beginning to end, forces us to ask, can a place, or for that matter a person, so deeply scarred by tragedy, by failure, by violence, can that same place also become a symbol of ultimate redemption? The entire arc of the biblical story seems to suggest that this isn't just possible, but that it's the very heart of the whole thing.